Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Matt Rhule, the Nebraska Cornhuskers, working their way through spring practice. And you kind of get into that point where a lot of players are emerging, kind of putting their stamp on what they're going to be for this Nebraska team heading into the 2024 year. Want to talk about some players that are standing out. Want to talk about some position battles that we're continuing to monitor. Really excited to get into this one. We said at the beginning of spring practice, this is going to be a really fun offseason for Nebraska. You look at this depth chart, and I think this is the deepest Nebraska has been in a very long time. A lot of those veterans deciding to run it back for one more year. You're injecting a lot of new talent into this roster as well. The competition seems really high, and that is very good. That's right where you want to be going into spring practice. Excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It truly, y'all know I love talking about this team. The amount of support the Nebraska fans consistently show the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear from some of you guys in the comment section on some players that are really piquing your interest, standing out to you guys as well. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And let's start with the biggest storyline that we have, and that is at the quarterback position. And let's start with Dylan Rhule. But before we get into, what we're hearing from the quarterback room, I want to talk about how this quarterback room looks like, specifically Glenn Thomas exclusively working with the quarterbacks. And I think that is absolutely massive. Obviously, Coach sat kind of playing double duty, working with the quarterbacks, being the offensive coordinator. I think bringing in Glenn Thomas as a guy that is pretty much his sole responsibility, his development at the quarterback spot, is absolutely massive. And there's a couple different ways that you can look at this Nebraska quarterback room. One, yes, it only has 3 scholarship guys. That might be a question mark, but it also in a lot of ways is a real positive heading into spring practice, where you're getting a ton of reps for some of these young quarterbacks like Dylan, like Daniel Kalen, and kind of focusing on Dylan Rhule. Some of the things that you're hearing from the coaches and some of the spring practice reports is, how polished he is as a quarterback. And we kind of said this for Dylan Rhule when he committed to Nebraska, came into this program. This is a guy that has been groomed his whole life to play quarterback at the college and NFL level. A lot of quarterbacks come into college with really, really talented arms. Dylan Rhule is certainly a very talented arm, but you got to clean up a lot of some things around that arm, right? The footwork, the mechanics. You don't really have to do that with Dylan Rhule because, again, he has been a guy that has been groomed to play that quarterback position his whole entire life. And I think it kind of comes down to what's going on between the ears for a guy like Dylan Rhule. And I think that's what excites you the most about his opportunity to get all of those reps in spring practice. A lot of other true freshman quarterbacks come into their respective program and are quarterback 5 or 6 on the depth chart, not getting a ton of reps in spring practice. Dylan Rhule, he's going to get a lot of reps. And I think the progression, not only kind of the mechanics and arm talent, but more importantly for Dylan's case, what's going on between the ears, going through his progressions, really understanding the playbook and understanding this Nebraska offense. That's what excites me the most. You combine that with Glenn Thomas, a guy that has proven at both the college and NFL level to have that ability to develop quarterbacks. That really excites me, gives me a lot of optimism about that quarterback room. And we've said it, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. If this Nebraska team gets good quarterback play in 2024, it is going to be an extremely dangerous team. Next guy I want to talk about, another true freshman that has been drawing a lot of praise, is Jakori Barney Jr. from Miami, Florida. And this is a guy that was a massive, massive get for Nebraska in that 2024 class. And what excites me the most about Jakori Barney Jr., going back to when we talked about him committing to Nebraska, he is a playmaker with the football in his hands, and kind of hearing that he's made some strides as a true freshman is very exciting. You go back to Nebraska in 2023, you look at the offense and the skill around the quarterback, and obviously the quarterback play wasn't where it needed to be. There's no secrets about that. You look at the playmakers around the quarterback spot, there really wasn't that many guys that were making plays for this Nebraska offense. There weren't a lot of guys that, hey, we got to get the football into his hands and let him go to work. Yes, you can talk about the offensive scheme all day long. There's a certain element of football where you got to have the playmakers that can make things happen with the football in their hands. Jakori Barney Jr. is one of those guys. He is extremely dynamic with the football in his hands, going back to his high school days. I'm really excited to see what kind of young wide receivers emerge in that wide receiver room that can be those guys that, hey, you're going to go make plays when we get you the football in space. Jakori Barney Jr. sounding like he could be one of those guys for this Nebraska offense. Next guy I want to talk about, another newcomer to this program, is Dante Dowell. And y'all know I'm excited about him. And I think what I'm most excited for is you look at what Nebraska wants to do on the offensive side of the football. Matt Rhule makes no secret about it. They want to win at the line of scrimmage. They want to run the football and be a physical football team. And you look at that running game last year, obviously with Gabe Ervin going down early in 2023, Anthony Grant having a lot of problems holding on to the football. I mean, Emmett Johnson was kind of thrusted into that role. And yes, I am very high on Emmett Johnson. I think he does a lot of things at a high level. One thing he didn't really give Nebraska was that big physical back that kind of has the ability to wear down defenses. Matt Rhule says it all the time. I want to run for 75 yards in the fourth quarter to put teams away. How do you do that at the college football level? I think you got to have those backs that kind of grind teams down. Dante Dowell at 6'2", 215 pounds. You read the spring practice reports. You got a lot of people saying, yeah, he looks different out there. He is standing out in that running back room. I think Dante Dowell fits exactly what Nebraska wants to do on the offensive side of the football in terms of being physical, being downhill, being able to absorb contact. You're asking me right now as we stand, who is going to lead this Nebraska team in rushing attempts and rushing yards? Y'all know I love Gabe Ervin, but right now not healthy. You're probably looking at Dante Dowell being a guy that can tote the rock 20, 25 times a game and really have that ability to wear down defenses. And I think, quite frankly, fits in this Nebraska running back room better than some of the other backs. And that's not a shot at guys like Rahmir Johnson, who's healthy, who's out there practicing, which I think is massive. I'm a huge fan of him. Or Emmett Johnson. I think you're going to see them get involved in different ways, but your running back who's kind of leading this running back room, I think certainly has a chance to be Dante Dowell. Next guy I want to talk about, another newcomer through the transfer portal, is Stefan Thompson. Now, kind of focusing on some of the newcomers because you know what you're getting from a lot of guys, right? Ty Robinson up front, a guy like Isaac Gifford. Y'all know I'm a massive fan of him. We kind of know what they're going to be heading into 2024. What are some of these other guys going to be and what roles are they going to play? Stefan Thompson is somebody that I want to focus in. Matt Rhule said came in out of shape. We have to ask him to kind of play some catch up in the weight room and in that strength and conditioning program. But on the field, Matt Rhule said that's what he does best. And you go back to the film on Syracuse, I would tend to agree. This was one of the better kind of chess pieces in that Syracuse defense. Even when Tony White was there at Syracuse, what I'm most interested in, and this will kind of be, you kind of keep reading the spring practice notes, you check in on the spring game, is how do they use a guy like Stefan Thompson, who's played that edge role, who's played the off-ball linebacker spot, and you look at this Nebraska defense, extremely deep, but one of those position groups that they might not be that deep in is that off-ball linebacker spot, and Stefan Thompson has the ability to play that off-ball linebacker spot, maybe on the early first and second downs, and then you can kick him in as an edge rusher in third down. I'm excited to see the different ways Tony White decides to use Stefan Thompson. Obviously, he knows Stefan Thompson and his capabilities extremely well going back to Syracuse. Tony White, what makes him a brilliant defensive coordinator in my mind is he has a very good ability to use these players in the roles that fit them best. And that's something that you can't say for a lot of other guys. They have their systems and you got to fit into the system. And if you don't, you're just not going to play, or you're not going to play that well. Tony White is brilliant in my mind. You go back and look at how he used Isaac Gifford at taking guys into this defense and saying, all right, what do you do best? Where can we put you in the best spots to be a successful player and help this team win? Stefan Thompson can do a lot of different things at a high level. I'm most excited to see what Tony White decides to do with a guy like Stefan Thompson that can provide a ton of different value from this Nebraska defense. Last guy I want to talk about in a loaded room, and this is mean, this is kind of why I'm so excited for Nebraska. Is you talk about looking at this depth chart up and down, looking at some key spots and saying, yeah, there's a lot of competition, and the guys that are going to be playing for Nebraska, you probably figure are going to be pretty dang good. Bly Hill is a very, very exciting prospect. You all know what I like in my cornerbacks. I like him long. I like him athletic. Yes, he's a little bit on the lean side, getting very, very positive reviews out of spring practice. It's a loaded cornerback room, and it's going to be hard to get on the field. Bly Hill was phenomenal at the FCS level last year. I think Matt Rhule brought him in to not only be in the 2 deep, but be a guy that pushes 4 starting spots at that cornerback role. And again, get you being creative with how you use these defensive backs in the back end. Bly Hill, another guy I'm extremely excited about. And you kind of look at this Nebraska team, there's a lot of guys that can play football for them. And I think Matt Rhule has done a really good job. And I mean, what he says after the spring practice press conference was, we're looking at reps. We want these guys getting a lot of experience, a lot of practice reps. Bly Hill, one of those guys that I think could emerge as a contributor in that Nebraska back end. Really excited to kind of continue to read through these spring practice notes, track what this team is doing on the spring practice field. Of course, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.